The movie starts with a customs officer named Robert Mazer. He worked as an undercover agent for a drug trafficking case. That day, Robert entered the bowling alley and disguised himself as a drug dealer. Shortly thereafter, a man approached him. They didn't talk that much, and right after, Robert secretly handed a bag to the man. When he was about to leave the bowling alley, suddenly Robert felt pain in his chest. For various reasons, he admitted that he was fine and asked his friend to get out immediately. As soon as they left through the front door, it turned out that police and customs officers were on standby to arrest the two of them. Robert, who was part of the customs officers, was immediately helped by his colleague, named Mark. Robert's chest was injured by something stuck there. Until that time, his friend, who received the bag, did not know that it was Robert who got him arrested. Robert returned home. He then gathered all his fake identities and burned them in front of his wife, who hoped that Robert would quit his job as an undercover agent. To fill his day off, Robert and his family came to Aunt Vicky's place for the holidays. His aunt advised Robert not to live in his own world with his work and to pay more attention to his wife and his son. The next day at the office, a briefing was held for handling a new case, named CJ's Operation. For the new case, Robert was paired with Amira Brew. Even though he could apply for his retirement for his long years of devotion to the government, he still refuses. That night, when Robert was spending time with his family, he was surprised by the arrival of Amira, who came out of nowhere. Amira informed him that he had an informant who could lead them to Gonzalo Mora. Amira thought that they could use the informant to make them one step closer to the drug dealer cartels. Unfortunately, Robert doubted that Amira's informant could just be someone selling false information to get money. He asked how much Amira believed in that person. Amira replied with, as much as he trusted him. Amira still contacted the informant while having a morning run together. Robert proposed a strategy for their mission to Mark. He proposed a psychological approach to detect drug cartel bosses by making them hungry for money instead of drugs. The problem was, he did not feel comfortable working with Amira. Mark replied that it was Robert who would not be able to work without Amira. According to Mark, Amira was the key for Robert to reach the cartels. The next day, Robert and Amira went to a public cemetery to find new identities, which they would later use in disguises, by using the name of someone who had died a long time ago. After looking at several names on the tombstones, Robert finally chose the name Robert Musella, while Amira chose Emilio Dominguez. For the mission, Robert was given a sound recorder disguised as a suitcase, which was made in such a way as to make it soundless while operating. To make the disguise more convincing, a businessman lands an office, with all the facilities in it, for Robert to use and disguise himself as a money-laundering businessman. Elsewhere, Amira's informant was having a meeting with Gonzalo. He persuaded Gonzalo to launder his money at Robert Musella's company. After much consideration, Gonzalo had a meeting with Amira. The two of them agreed to make a cooperation. On the other hand, Robert went to prison to meet a prisoner, named Dominic. There, he asked Dominic to help him in his undercover mission in exchange for his freedom. Initially, Dominic did not want to help him because he didn't want to be a traitor, even though he no longer worked with his boss. But then, he finally changed his mind and agreed to work with Robert and Amira. Their turn to play their role as a money-laundering businessman started. Every day, Robert had to check the amount of money coming in from the cartel. He then divided it into smaller amounts that could be used safely. A few days after they started working together, Robert and Gonzalo finally met for the first time at a nightclub. In their meeting, Robert assured him that his company would be able to secure the money because he only cooperated with legal companies. Robert's goal this time was to gain Gonzalo's trust so that he could ask to meet with Gonzalo's superiors. That way, he could persuade their drug cartel to launder large sums of money in his company. For the deal, Gonzalo presented Robert with a prostitute, who had been paid to do everything that he wanted. He then remembered his wife, a woman he had known since junior high school, the woman he had a family with. Robert refused the gift while saying that he already had a fiancée and would soon get married. Every time they finished their operation, Robert and Amira always argued because of their different ways of carrying out their undercover operation. Even though they had the same goal, which was to frame the drug mafia and arrest them, instead of following the flow of the drugs being circulated, they chose to follow the flow of drug-produced money, so that even people who had never been seen in the business would be seen from the traces of where the money was going. Briefings for the development and the next phase of the operations were routinely done every now and then. The next day, after the briefing was finished, Robert was introduced to a woman, named Kathy, who would play the role of his fiancée, as well as his future wife in the operation. Sometime later, Gonzalo finally decided to introduce Robert to the person behind Pablo Escobar's money laundering, Javier Ospina. Pablo Escobar was the leader of the largest drug cartel at that time, which monopolized the distribution of cocaine-type drugs. The cartel was named the Medellin Cartel, which was based in Colombia. Using a private jet, Robert took Ospina to a mansion he claimed to be his. Robert offered to cooperate in laundering the money belonging to Pablo Escobar, but Ospina still couldn't decide and said that he had to confirm it with his big boss first. They thought that day had not reached an agreement, but they still enjoyed their time at the mansion. When Robert was walking on the stairs, he crossed paths with Ospina, who shockingly moved his hand to Robert's private parts. It turned out that Ospina was gay. This made Robert rather uncomfortable. He approached Gonzalo and said he didn't care about their cooperation if he had to deal with a gay person, but Gonzalo convinced Robert that Ospina would not do anything more than that. When they were about to leave, Ospina approached Robert. He said that he agreed to cooperate with the money laundering business agreement. One day, when he was in the office, Robert got a call from Akbar Bothrami, a bank officer from the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, in Panama. He told Robert that some checks might have some mistypes, but it turned out that it was just an opening to talk about the real thing. He saw that Robert's company's financial transactions were very active. Therefore, he offered to take care of all of Robert's transactions as a form of special service provided by the bank to Robert. As for Robert, it was an advantage for him to be able to find out more about how money and those people worked. All the conversations with Bill Grammy had been recorded by Robert. To follow up with the cooperation, Robert was asked to come to the bank to meet with the bank's officials. At the meeting, Robert was assured that the bank would help him to manage his money. Robert himself never forgot to record every conversation he had for evidence. After that, Robert met Barry at a horse racetrack. Barry was a pilot, who was also involved in the Medellin cartel network. He was assigned with smuggling cocaine from Colombia to America. They both went home together in a car driven by Barry. While talking about something in the car, suddenly a motorbike approached the car and suddenly shot Barry in the head, killing him instantly. The car they were riding in immediately lost control and rolled over, but luckily, Robert was able to survive the accident. It's discovered that the person who shot Barry was Escobar's man because Barry, besides being a cocaine smuggling pilot, was also an informant for the CIA. That's what made Escobar finally get rid of him. In Robert's office, he was assured that Escobar wasn't targeting him because, if it turned out that Robert was being targeted, then their operation would most likely fail. Robert didn't want to delay any longer meeting with other mafias in the drug cartel, considering that the situation was getting more and more dangerous. He then let Ospina make an appointment to meet the boss to help expand the company's network. Robert was then blindfolded and taken to an unknown place to meet Roberto Alcano, a drug dealer and cocaine distributor, who worked under the direct supervision of Pablo Escobar. Robert must go through certain inspections, carried out by someone with some kind of ritual. People who do not pass the ritual will be shot to death. After he passed the ritual, he was given some time to prepare himself before meeting with the big boss. Not long after, Robert finally met Alcano. During the meeting, they discussed a lot of things, mostly about where and how the drug money was used. The meeting eventually made them closer. Alcano even didn't hesitate to invite Robert to his house. Even more, his wife had a close relationship with Kathy. Transaction after transaction was done smoothly. Robert was able to help him with his money, and from then, he had so much trust in Robert. He already considered Robert as a friend. Barry's death news finally struck Alcano. He never thought that his best friend could be one of the government informants. He was upset to hear the news because he didn't expect his best friend to work with the government, but now he was grateful to have met Robert, his new trusty best friend. He trusted Robert so much, he thought of ways to introduce him to Pablo Escobar. Alcano then asked Robert to help him free up $10 million in the name of Don Cheap. The money under that account was frozen in the Bank of Panama. The money itself was owned by Pablo Escobar himself. Robert tried to explain the situation, so his fellow undercover team could help him out, but they couldn't do anything because the account was frozen by the president's mandate. While Robert was still thinking of ways to save the money, he also received terror threats from Pablo Escobar. He received a package containing a miniature coffin filled with blood. Realizing how dangerous her husband's job was, she asked her husband to retire immediately. Robert then met with Alcano to ask him to tell Don Cheap that he and his company wouldn't work under distress. Later on, Robert had a meeting with Bill Grammy and Umjud Awan, delegations from the BCCI. As a special client at their bank, Robert asked both of them to help disperse the $10 million from Don Cheap's bank account in Panama. Realizing the good opportunity, Awan accepted the request, but in exchange, he required Robert to increase his deposit to the bank. He then would plan a meeting between Robert and other BCCI officials. He then took a flight to Paris to attend the meeting. Surprisingly, Kathy, who was attending the meeting with Robert, suddenly announced her wedding to Robert and invited everyone to come to the party. After that, Robert had a meeting with a confidant of Pablo Escobar, whose name was Rudy. Besides him, Ospina was also present at the meeting. In the middle of their conversation, Robert's suitcase was accidentally opened, revealing a voice recorder hidden in it. Although it was successfully covered up, Ospina had taken a glossy of it and felt betrayed by Robert. Unfortunately, he was later killed in a bar by Pablo Escobar's man. In the morning, when Robert and Kathy were about to check out from the hotel, Rudy came up to them. He gave authority to Robert to make a transaction of $150 million to BCCI. Robert's plan to go home was postponed. He would go to BCCI's headquarters in London, while Kathy would return to prepare for their fake wedding. Kathy went to meet Robert's wife to pick up Robert's wedding suit. At that moment, Robert's wife was worried that her husband had an affair with Kathy, but when Kathy proved that Robert loved his wife so much, she was relieved. When Robert was in London, his boss informed him that, at that time, Elcano was preparing to ship pure cocaine, worth $23 million, in Miami. Robert asked for a little time until he could meet the founder of BCCI, but his superiors could not grant his requests. A raid was carried out at the packing place in Elcano's residence. Unfortunately, Elcano had successfully escaped the raid, and his wife had managed to destroy some of the documentary evidence in their home safe. After returning from London, Robert immediately visited Elcano's house to make sure Elcano's wife's condition, who was still in shock from the raid. She then gave the cocaine distribution authority to Robert, while her husband was hiding from the police. Robert, on the other hand, felt sorry for Elcano's wife and tried to save her by asking her to return to Colombia, but she refused. She said that she wanted to do something to save her husband, even though it was risky. That situation made Robert and Kathy in a dilemma. On one side, they were carrying an undercover operation to catch a drug cartel, but on the other side, they didn't have the heart to betray Elcano and his wife's trust in them. To convince themselves of what action to take, they came back to their senses that it was part of their job. The fake wedding party finally came. Everything they needed had been prepared very carefully. Likewise, the media crew would record the biggest arrest that would happen at that time. The fake wedding event became the peak of their operation because all the people involved in the drug cartel would attend as guests, like a school of fish that would fall into a trap. One by one, the people who were targeted were present. Even Elcano, who was in his hiding at that time, was willing to take big risks just to attend Robert's wedding. Robert was happy with Elcano's arrival, but another part of him didn't want him to take such big risks. The ceremony finally started. Robert walked to the altar first to wait for Kathy's arrival as the bride. Before the wedding vows were made, the priest asked the bride and groom to face all the guests present. Kathy could not stop feeling guilty every time she saw Elcano's wife smiling happily at her. Suddenly, a police car came with a loud siren. Police forces, scattered in all corners of the room, rushed to move and caught the people who were present there. Everyone was arrested without exception. That was when Robert and Kathy's disguise ended. Elcano and his wife looked at Robert and Kathy with a look full of disappointment. Elcano's wife even called them traitors. They still didn't expect that Robert and Kathy were undercover agents. After that operation ended, Robert finally could focus on his small family, but he still did his job. Robert was presented as a witness in court in New York, Tampa, and London.